Greetings. Do without wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Magic in Theory and Practice video. Today we're going to be diving into Chapter 19 of Dramatic Rituals. Let's begin. So I've already covered invocation in full in a previous video. Therefore, I will do my best not to be repetitive, only covering that which differs from the process of invocation when performing a dramatic ritual. Though the two certainly overlap, invocation is just the process of bringing in external force into oneself, while dramatic ritual is more like acting in order to perform an invocation, or evocation or whatever, evoking energy and emotion by taking on a particular character, kind of like in a play, so to speak. Crowley begins the chapter rather mysteriously, saying that around the world are occult orders, and within them, the vast majority of their rituals are the invocations of deities. I mean, yeah, this is true, but in today's world, secret societies are way more public. There are many different traditions, all operating, most with rituals and lectures that are open to the public, and then they have their private events for members only, which include more intense invocations that newcomers, you don't want to expose them to, and then their initiation rituals, which are kept private. I think I've covered that in previous videos. Initiations should be secret because you're not in control. You shouldn't know what's going to happen. It ruins the surprise. There should be a state of anticipation and unsurety. And yeah, so ruining that experience takes those components away. If you know what's going to happen, there's no fear, kind of, what's going to happen in this ritual. What are they doing? So it takes that component away. Regardless, the fact is there are way more practicing magicians today, and a large part of what we do is in fact dramatic ceremonies which include invocations, all under the umbrella term theurgy. Quote, "These rituals are therefore well suited for such persons as are capable of understanding the spirit of magic, as opposed to just the letter." End quote. If you hang around occult circles long enough, you'll eventually hear the term armchair magician. And based on this chapter, the way that was written, I'm guessing that they even existed in Crowley's day. The point being made is this: invocation, ritual magic of any means, while it does require knowledge, following a book, a script, line by line, without understanding how to actually use what the material says, leads to empty words and gestures. Further, you need to be able to raise emotion. It should not be a very stiff. You have to know how to direct energy. You must be able to do things while you are speaking the words of invocation. These things include moving energy and directing light, assuming God forms, magnetizing one's body of light, to attract energy, to attract the deity, to bring that deity that you are calling into your being and actually invoke it. Not just pretend you're doing so, not just reading a line and think that it's going to happen automatically, not just moving like a grade sign says to do. If you give the sign of silence without actually crystallizing your body of light, that's an empty gesture. You have to know how to do that. You have to manipulate the astral light around you. And believe me, there are a lot of people who think they're doing magic, while it is really nothing more than cosplay. I've seen this at lodges that I've been to numerous times. A lot of empty words and a lot of empty gestures in some places that I've been to. Even with things as simple as the LBRP and LBRH, I have seen firsthand people that make empty gestures and words and see that they did not actually draw anything on the astral plane. You can feel there was no energy present as they go through the motions of attempting to perform even the simplest of rituals. There was a guy at a specific lodge I used to belong to, and I'm talking of him. He did the LBRH for my Nuit ritual that I had written the script for me, him, and one other participant, I don't know, 2015 or something, 2015 I think the year was. And it's like, he did the LBRH, and there was no energy, it was nothing. He was literally just saying words and moving his finger or wand or whatever in the air, not actually affecting anything. And this is unfortunately very common. And so that's what Crowley's saying, not just the letter. You have to understand the magic. And it's so much worse when it comes to actual dramatic rituals, as we are discussing today. With dramatic ritual, while an invocation can be performed alone, quote, one of the great advantages of dramatic ceremonies is that a large number of persons may take part, so that there is consequently more force available. But it is important that they should all be initiates of the same mysteries, bound by the same oaths, and filled with the same aspirations. They should be associated only for this one purpose, end quote. I think that last part's a little extreme. You could build friendships with people over time, but when you're doing the ritual, everybody should be in that ritual for the sake of doing that ritual, not for any other reason. Not to gain bonus points with other people that are part of your group, or, show off or inflate your ego. No, you should be doing that ritual just to do that ritual. That's the focus. And now we come to the meat and potatoes of the chapter. Quote, such a company being prepared, the story of the god should be dramatized by a well-skilled poet accustomed to this form of composition. Lengthy speeches and invocations should be avoided, but action should be very full, end quote. And one of the best and most common examples of dramatic ritual is Liber 15, because it's performed so often that a lot of people have witnessed it. But even better would be the rites of Eleusis, and that gets referenced in this chapter in a moment. While participating, let's say, in Liber 15, there are so many subtleties that can enhance the ritual by affecting the psyche of those present. I'm going to give an example in a second, but on a magical level, there's things that you can do in any ritual that only experience teaches you. For example, when I would deacon in Liber 15, while everybody is getting their cake of light and wine, the deacon is just standing off to the side, not particularly doing much, maybe just telling people, okay, you go next, right? Sometimes they'll hold the wine and cakes if there's no children participating. But what I've done while I'm standing there, if there's a lot of people, let's say there's 25, 30 people in attendance, you could be there for a good 25, 30 minutes, depending on how long each person takes. I would actually do Liber HHH. I think it's the first section where you feel each channel of your spine and you raise Kundalini up and down. Or while a priestess is stroking the priest's lance, I would also raise energy up and down my spinal column as I'm seeing her do that. There's things experience teaches you. But on the note of dramatic ritual, things that everybody in the audience, in attendance, and the ritualist can see. For example, one time a priest I worked with as their deacon, when the priestess unveiled his tomb, he would be standing there holding the staff, but leaning on it with his head down slightly, as though he were dead and unanimated, almost like a statue, a corpse-like statue. Once she opens the veil and draws the first cross over him, saying, quote, by the power of iron, cross over him, I say unto thee, arise, end quote. This particular priest would suddenly breathe in dramatically, as if he were Osiris, being reborn back to life from the dead, and he would animate his body like a charge of spirit or electricity just came down and woke his whole body up. You could see it move. Years later, that small detail still sticks with me. It affected me in a very positive manner witnessing this ritual, drawing me into the ritual and suspending my disbelief long enough that I could accept him being raised from the dead in his tomb. It's part of the play. With the rites of Eleusis, understanding the feeling and energy of the planet being worked with, the nature and characteristics of it, allows one in the ceremony to embody those features. For lunacy is at times a great example. Act crazy. At other times, Luna can be sensual as a wife, or gentle and loving, nurturing like a mother. So when you're doing one of these rites of Eleusis and you're playing a specific role, if that role has room for you to embody that planet in a specific way, through the way you move, the tone of your voice, whatever, the way you look around, or there's ways to convey those ideas through body language. Use that. Quote, such ceremonies should be carefully rehearsed and should be studied by the principal character in private. End quote. So with rituals like Liber 15, There are usually elders and bishops present to guide the newcomers, acting in the child or deacon positions for the first times. But even after many years, rehearsals are still mandatory. Study and memorization are mandatory. But more obscure or newly written rituals, it's even more important to rehearse before performing. A really good dramatic ritual has multiple participants and tons of dialogue, and a lot of choreography. Every step and movement should be intentional and for a specific reason. Every word is spoken only because it adds something to the invocation and ritual as a whole. Everything one does in that ritual should help to advance the ceremony. There should be no movement or words spoken for no reason. It should help to advance to the next portion of the ritual, move things along. Also note that, quote, in rehearsals, care should be taken to omit the climax, which should be studied by the principal character in private, end quote. I've heard often this statement, and I agree with that, and I take it a step further. During rehearsal, I highly recommend not putting into one's words or motions any energy. Save it. Nor practicing the preliminary work for like a new person, right? Have them speak the process of the LBRP, not actually do it. Don't even have them draw the pentagrams. To have them verbally say what they're going to do. My reasoning is that you should save every drop of energy for the actual performance. Further, every line and movement should be thoroughly memorized prior to the rehearsal so everyone participating is prepared. It'll make the rehearsal go a lot smoother. Quote, the play should be so arranged that this climax depends on him alone. By this means, one prevents the ceremony from becoming mechanical or hackneyed, and the element of surprise assists the lesser characters to get out of themselves at the supreme moment, end quote. Still using Liber 15 as an example, the rehearsal takes place first guiding the children by the priestess, walking around the temple and quickly reiterating what lines need to be said. Then the deacon goes over their part. Then the priest and priestess, usually the most practiced, having most likely been children and deacons in previous performances, should by this time know their parts, but say if it's one of their first times in this role, they should go over the verses and gestures, which at times are quite complicated. They will not, however, use a cake of lighter wine, and it's best to avoid some of those parts. Say them out, don't actually do them. Further, the priestess will not disrobe in the rehearsal. The particle of the host is not going to be dropped into the grail. You probably shouldn't even use the implement if possible. Maybe you want to test the weight of if it's a new lance that you've not worked with, maybe you want to test the weight. But even there, make sure you're not putting any energy into those motions. Also, I think it's a good idea not to rehearse such parts in front of the deacon or children, so that the three of them are actually excited by finally get to see the union of priest and priestess mixing the alchemical substances. Crowley then references the rites of Eleusis. Quote, following the climax, there should always be an unrehearsed ceremony, an impromptu. The most satisfactory form of this is the dance. In such ceremonies, appropriate libations may be freely used. The rite of Luna is a good example of this. Here the climax is the music of the goddess, the assistants remaining in silent ecstasy. In the rite of Jupiter, the impromptu is the dance. In that of Saturn, long periods of silence, end quote. In such cases, the ritualist should surprise the audience. After invoking into the temple the proper forces, encourage them to get up and dance. This is not all that frequently employed, but when done correctly, the result is absolutely cathartic. One time in a ritual that I performed, we were working with the sphere of Bina and Saturn, and we suggested doing a scrying in the dark with just one candle inside the entire temple, and everybody would get like up to 5 minutes or 10 minutes before we ushered them off, and there was about, I want to say 15 to 20 people, so that's a big period of time to sit there waiting for somebody to scry and gaze into a mirror after we've invoked a bunch of energies. So people are just sitting there in silence with one person in the sign of the Emperor, the other person in the sign of silence, and then one person ushering up each audience member in between these two characters. So it's like just a long time in the darkness. That silence affected people to the point that they saw entities moving around the temple that weren't there, and these were people that had never experienced ritual magic. They thought maybe we dosed them by putting some type of hallucinogenic incense, and I assure you, it was strictly myrrh in that incense. I would never dose somebody without their awareness. Um, so it's those impromptu things that the audience is not aware are going to happen. An hour and a half in silence waiting to scry, or after having just scried, that affects you, especially when you're invoking Saturn, you know? So there's a lot of cool things that you could do in that manner. And here, this brings up the idea of music in dramatic rituals. Music evokes emotion. It affects people on the level of their soul. In a moment, during the ceremony when it is particularly happy, sad, mystical, music should be previously chosen and played accordingly. Sometimes a person in the audience, usually affiliated with the ritualist temple, will be asked to play the radio with music set up at particular moments. In more elaborate circumstances, live musicians, even a full orchestra, will play using songs that emphasize the emotions of the ritual at any given point. Crowley writes that in the Rites of Eleusis, quote, poetry and music were largely employed, mostly published pieces by well-known authors and composers. It would be better to write and compose specially for the ceremony, end quote. Known songs carry memories of when the person hearing it had listened to it in the past. This runs the risk of pushing their minds out of the moment and into those memories. If the music is written specifically for the ritual, and if no one there had heard it before, or else if they only heard it during the ritual the last time that it was performed, then their minds will only have the memory of this moment or the ritual the last time they were witnessing it. They're going to be less distracted. If anything, they're going to be sucked more into the ritual. So, this is a short chapter, and I want to just talk about the idea of embodying a character. Whatever role you are participating in, you need to become that character. You are invoking a persona, sometimes even an archetype, which the character represents. Now, this could be really wonderful, but it has dangers, you know? Yeah, it depends on the role, you know, like priestess, she's representing at times the mother figure, you know, so you want to portray that. I've been in masses where the priestess sounded particularly angry or hostile, um, yeah, that adds a flair to it. It could be like a very cool Babylon figure, but it depends on what you want to convey through your role, you know? So keep that in mind. The way you speak, the way you do things, it affects the people witnessing it. So be aware of what you want to invoke, what you want to evoke out of the people there, because their energy is going to go back into the ritual as well. It's going to get soaked in like a sponge. And I mentioned that, you know, you're taking on this figure, you're invoking this particular energy of this character. That's all good and well, but I'm going to go off script and just tell the story. So we did the Feast of the Dragon some years back, and, you know, I've done many rituals. In LIL, I play the role of the hermit. I'm carrying the staff and I'm carrying the lamp. And when I portray the hermit, I try to be very solemn, speak with surety, wisdom, and age. Very cool, very calm. I'm old and I'm the hermit and I've seen it all, I've done it all. My time is ending. I'm trying to pass this off to the next person. I'm trying to deliver this light or the path to the next person so that they can continue carrying the light. You know, I'm trying to convey all of those emotions. Anyway, that's all good and well. There's no danger there for me. But I was in a ritual at the Feast of the Dragon, and I was doing it with a person that was relatively unstable mentally and emotionally, and he took on the role of Master of the Temple in that ceremony. And he did a really good job invoking that energy. Mind you, he has bipolar and a bunch of other mental disorders, so he's unstable to begin with, and he had been doing some goetic work on top of that, and then he had just taken his initiation into like a mineral degree or something. And so there's a lot of external factors, but then he did that ritual, and I think he did a really good job invoking this idea of the Master of the Temple, so good that he was not ready to really handle that energy. And along with all those other extenuating circumstances that coincidentally just happened to be going on in his life, and I don't believe in coincidences, you know, he ended up going through a serious emotional rock bottom and becoming extraordinarily hostile. Point is, when you are portraying a character, you need to be prepared to take on the role of that character. Make sure that it's not above your pay grade, so to speak. Know what your limits are and just follow suit accordingly. If you really know whether or not you could take on a role and you follow that internal guidance of, yeah, I could do this and I've done things similar, or maybe I'm pushing the bar just a little bit, but it's not too much, that's all good and well. But, just know your limits in any given situation. If you haven't done Libre E, it's a good time for me to plug Libre E again. People don't take that section serious where it says physical limitations. You need to know what your emotional limitations are. You need to know what your spiritual limitations are. You need to know what your physical limitations are. How much can you read? How long can you stay awake? How far can you walk? How far can you run? How far can you swim? How long can you hold your breath? Name it. What type of energies are you good at working with? What type of energies do you find uncomfortable to work with? All of these things are very important to know about yourself. What do you already have a lot of in your magical armamentarium? What's at your disposal magically? What's missing magically? What do you already have plenty of based on things in your natal chart? What characteristics based on planets or other energies do you lack? Are you a very passive person or are you a very aggressive person? If you're very aggressive, maybe try to work with some feminine energy. If you're overly passive, try to work with some Mars or solar energy. It depends accordingly. Know yourself in any given situation and you'll be fine. So, I hope that this video helps give a few ideas about dramatic ritual. The chapter itself is very short. I could probably add more to it, but I'm not going to hold anybody up here. P.S. Really quick, if my channel gets to 1,000 subscribers by the spring equinox, which this year it's March 19th at 11:06 p.m. If we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're already at 650. I'm going to be giving away a Stele of Revealing, a 1/3 scale. They're a bit larger. I think they run like 9 inches tall by 6 inches wide, something like that, and like a 1/2 inch thick. I hand make them. I cut the wood. I use plaster because I don't have that specific type of clay from Egypt that they used available. It was like a stucco. So I don't have that available. I could use a stucco instead of plaster, but I prefer plaster. So I cut wood, I plaster, I sand everything all by hand, and then I paint every detail on it by hand. I've sold probably 13 or 14 of them, and I have a couple in stock, and I'm going to be making a new one. So if we get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll give more instructions. If we could get there by the spring equinox, I will be giving away a Stele of Revealing 1/3 scale, and as we get closer, if we seem like we're going to be able to hit that milestone, I'll talk more about how that's going to go. Hopefully, for me, this is not about numbers. If I have one person that's getting helped by hearing what I talk about on this channel, all good and well. I've done my job. If I have 100,000 subscribers at some point in the future, all good and well. To me, it just matters about, am I helping anybody? Is this information helpful in any type of way? Am I keeping people engaged? And am I keeping my tradition of the Lima alive? And are people that hear me becoming enthusiastic about this? That's what matters most to me. So anyway, if we could get to 1,000, I want to give away. So share, like, comment, subscribe. I don't say that hardly often enough, but yeah, do the things. And if you're interested in participating in helping me get to 1,000 subscribers, you never know, you might win the Stele. So love is the law, love under will. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.